how are the different species interacting, what high diversity does to this interaction, low diversity does to this. And we don't only want to do it in one small place. We want to do that globally. So what we need is high quality, big biodiversity data. And this is how it looks like. Beautiful. So GBIF, you can see in the center on the right. Code data is not there, but this is work we have done in a project where we have tried to sketch up the biodiversity informatics landscape. And as you can see, it's almost as bad as biodiversity. It's highly complex. So we need to try to figure out how all of this can come together so that we can produce large-scale biodiversity data, have comparability between data sets, and that we can mobilize new data so that we can get robust data and decision-making for a decision-making tool for policy. And that's where the EBV concept comes in. So we have very much to the left side the raw data. And what we're used to is very much to the right side. These are indicators. Indicators are very popular with policy because that's something they can understand with their, so to say, limited knowledge they have about biodiversity. So, for the moment, we have gone from the raw data to the indicators, leaving aside a huge amount of data and data sets, which we need to capture still, because otherwise we are not giving a clear picture, an honest picture about biodiversity and trends in biodiversity. So that's where the EBVs come in. In the original definition, EBVs were defined as a measurement required for study, reporting, and management of biodiversity change. They have been classed into 6 different classes: genetic composition, species population, species traits, community composition, ecosystem structure, ecosystem function. There has been a proposition, and I say proposition, it's not that these are the final EBVs, of 22 potential EBVs. Given of what you heard by now, you have seen that the data landscape out there is very complex, and that doesn't make it any easier. But the EBV concept would want to break down this biodiversity into better understandable elements of biodiversity in better manageable data sets, and allowing therewith an easier communication outside of science and an enhanced possibility to do local to large to global scale analysis of biodiversity. So we have made some progress with the EBV concept, but for example here you can see different propositions for EBVs which are to some extent interlinked. So for example, the body mass index would be dependent on the allelic diversity, but not on the survival rate or phenology. The abundance would be related to allelic diversity, body mass index, and size at first reproduction. So all of these would be different EBVs, but they would be to some extent interlinked, so giving you complementary ideas about biodiversity. I would like to restate here, this is something very important in understanding the EBVs, is a refinement of the definition of EBVs. You need to be aware that EBVs are biological state variables. They are not pressure variables. They exploitation or benefits like ecosystem services or responses to habitat or protected areas are not EBVs. These are variables who can explain biodiversity change, but they have nothing to do with the EBVs. And an EBV needs to capture biodiversity change within a specified range of spatial and temporal grain at its end, and it needs to be an important change for biodiversity. Well, I guess the screen is way too small, but with these QR codes you could get to the different references directly, but won't work, I guess. Anyway, this is a picture which you have seen from Donald already, and I have made this a central part of my presentation here. So this is what I call, what others call it. So this EBVQ is a data queue over space, over time, and a biological component. You have actually heard quite a lot of how to get to such a data queue. Because, I mean, we have huge data holds. I'm only mentioning a few, but one of them is definitely GBIF. And GBIF, for the moment, has done a lot of work, cleaning data, checking for plausibility, detecting duplicates, and so on and so on. But that's only based on one kind of data set and one kind of EBV, which is a kind of species distribution EBV. But all the others, like allelic richness or body mass or whatever, these are data which you have difficulties to find it. And they are coming from very different directions. And to build an EBV, you need to merge these data sets, but you need to understand what those data sets are. What they are about. You need metadata, and you need to see about the spatial temporal solution. Then you need to check, okay, what are gaps? How can I fill those gaps? And once you have done this, you're actually going a little bit back and you do the data cleaning again, you check for plausibility, and so on and so on. So this is a huge amount of work. And this is a service which is done from scientists for scientists in the first place. And we have started in giving or sketching out how these different services could look like. So, for example, in the paper from Kissling et al., we clearly show, okay, there might be data sets which are more or less usable directly as an EBV, meaning they are of good quality, they are global or large-scale data, cleaned, and so on and so on. So these are easily usable data sets. And then there are EBV-ready data sets which might need a little bit more work. Including also maybe some additional data which come from modeling to fill certain gaps. So we need to understand the observation protocols on the right format, if those data sets are harmonized, standardized, are they interoperable, can they be extrapolated, what kind of statistical model would allow fill data gaps, and so on and so on. So there are a amount of challenges in this data processing and building of these. which definitely won't be done by the users at the end, but needs to be done by scientists, so that the expert knowledge of a scientist can be used to develop those EBDs. And when you go into detail, we'll see that there is a lot of work. You need to match taxonomy. You need to check the data quality. You need to calculate uncertainty. You need to have good ideas about visualizing results, and all of this is absolutely necessary to make the concept a real contribution to science and to policy. For example, a service from science is also how to visualize such an EBD. I mean, a data cube, it's a nice thing, but how do you go through this? So there's a group around also which Donald and I am involved in, trying to have some innovative ideas how to bring these things together. In this case, about presence and absence of species in different countries, in different habitats, and so on, and that over time. Once you have this kind of species occurrence data, you need to maybe bring it together with environmental data to use models to fill certain gaps, and then you can get another group of information of data, which can be called species occurrence prediction, because we will very likely not be able to monitoring everywhere at each spot in the world to have real data. So we need to fall back to some extent on well-informed models to do so. Also, this is very important service of science to develop this EBD concept further. Because only then, when we have this partly real data, partly model data, cube on species distributions, we will be able to use this data for a large amount of different applications. If that's, for example, the impact of species, more detailed species abundance, different species traits, and so on. And only with that we then can come to the indicators. So developing then new indicators or improving existing ones will also be an important service based on the development. And only when we have done all of this, and once we have this view and all the tools available, will we actually be able to measure biodiversity change, see are there range shifts, are there turnovers in communities, declines of populations, and so on. And then we need to have the information on drivers and pressure to explain actually why we have this biodiversity change. And then, based on this, we can do a forecast of biodiversity change. And once this has been achieved, only then we can be a real service for the policy. And if that's IPBES, or if that's the Aichi targets, or any other governmental structure who demands information about biodiversity, status and trends of biodiversity, needs to be going through this, and we need to focus on the way to make this happen. We have done an analysis about, for example, policy relevance regarding the Aichi targets. So you can see darker spots are points where this EBD would have an important contribution or the main contribution, but you can see that some of those EBDs may have implications and contributions to different Aichi targets. And you can see that in general there are actually quite a few dots on this table, So the EBVs are definitely of policy relevance. And this is something which we need also to keep in mind, so that the EBV concept is also usable and interesting, not only for science, but also for policy. And with these essential biodiversity variables, and also go quite a step further, because it's also about data collection. So the policy also needs to know, okay, the data which we have collected, which we want to collect in the future, how does it need to look like? How does a good monitoring scheme look like? And how can we store all that huge amount of data? And then we can come to decisions and governance of biodiversity, and allow for a smooth information flow to really use the potential of these. Because, yeah, I mean, it's important that we also think of how these can be used in biodiversity monitoring, because the operationalization of this concept very much depends on how it can be implemented in the design of biodiversity monitoring programs. And there are a huge amount of possibilities to do so, and we need to think, okay, where are the gaps, how can we fill those? Is the data, the way of how the data is collected, a sensible way forward, or would need to make a break, a change, or can be supplemented by data from museums or from some drawer in some old professor's lab, for example. I'm sure some of you are still having those somewhere. And we need to continue this work on the EPs to bring the complexity of biodiversity and the complexity of the bioclimatic landscape together. And for that, we also would need a very good definition of what an EBV actually is. We would need to come up with a priority list of EBVs, because might be able to imagine that having 20 or more EBVs might first not be very sensible on one side, and secondly, it might not be feasible with the limited resources there are. And then only then we can operationalize. We can already use the concept to communicate with the policy arena and also citizen science, but maybe by the monitoring could be streamlined. And for sure, it's also meant that the concept is supporting the open access data movement, so to say, so that the data becomes open access for everyone, so that everyone can be informed about the state of biodiversity. So about the key EBVs, this is something which is a huge discussion, and I'm not going there because it's something where the EBV community is not very unified at the moment. There are a couple of papers out there with different suggestions. If we would follow all those suggestions, we would have 50 plus EBVs. I think this would be quite a bad idea here for development of EBVs. But for example, we could go to critical EBVs, and this is something where we have thought about which traits are out there for which we have data, and how important would they be, and how quickly would they react to impacts from the outside. How critical would that change be? Meaning, a critical change is something which is difficult to reverse at the end. And that's where we came up with a suite of essential biodiversity variables well, for the moment it's 8, but only 6 of them might really be informable with the current data set. But with this set of critical EPs, so to say, we would be able to very well give an idea about biodiversity, a rather complete picture across all of the different organizational levels of biology. Yeah, with that, I thank you. I invite you to post questions. If not now directly, you can post by email, or you talk to some of the colleagues who are present in the room who have a similar good understanding of the concept and the services the concept can provide for science and policy. Thank you.